对，所以就是偶尔会得听到要也当人来生活。
Hello.
Hey, good
How's everybody,
afternoon.
how's everybody doing today?
Good, how are you?
All right. Get moving here. That up. Pretty close to critical mass. That's good. I don't know. Let me just start sharing. Kicking. It's all related. Okay. All right. Can you see my agenda?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Let's start with Marco's annoying favorite, which is turning on cameras for at least a little bit, so I can feel like looking together. Okay. Then I will get into opens. Current plan is I canceled I already canceled basically the work group for the last 2 weeks of the year. I really don't expect anybody to be there. So the question I guess is, will we have do we believe we have quorum next week? I'm going to be here.
So I'll be in next week, and then I'm out the week of Christmas.
Yeah, those weeks I've already canceled.
Yeah, I'll be in next week.
I will too.
Okay. All right, I call that critical mass. So we'll stick with that. I want to apologize for the calendar trash I created. There's something buggy with the OCP calendar. If I cancel one meeting, it should, at least for us at Intel, it comes in as the entire series is canceled. And the only way to recover is to cancel the entire series and make a new meeting invite. I guess the upside is that I don't know what's happening, but the downside that it's still irritating. All right. Then still looking for a co-chair. I may or may not have an idea how that gets resolved, but if anybody wants to raise their hand, the call to action is still open. Right, open from anybody else. Going once, going twice, going 3 times. All right. So going into kind of the discussion we had last week, I put out a proposal for the code currency. Thanks, Jason, for running the lint check. I put you kind of on the agenda here as at least acknowledging, the contribution. Thank you so much. I had one question on that. Out of that, it was kind of down here. It was basically complaining about inconsistent casing, um, which is absolutely valid. We don't want it inconsistent, but at least in my like initial research, I couldn't really figure out which one's the better option. Because it seems like one is what's used by JSON, the other one is what's used by Redfish. Anybody have any thoughts?
No, though that's weird that Redfish isn't using JSON. So I thought its return was a JSON format.
Yeah, I was confused too. I kind of, I basically was like, okay, I basically looked at this and then plugged it into ChatGPT and so to see whether, oh, actually into Copilot to see if I can get a quick answer. The quick answer was like, well, JSON and Redfish don't seem to be in agreement. Justin, do you have any idea?
I don't. I wasn't on last week either.
Yeah, so
That is inconsistent though with the way Redfish usually does it.
yeah, I forgot. Actually, I put this thing I put this on a slide. This is basically my cop. The return of the Copilot query was like, well, JSON does it one way and Redfish does it another way. I'm like, I, that's
I
scratching
don't
my
know
head.
that JSON really specifies, does it?
Uh, I,
I mean,
I
you're right. The Redfish is Pascal case, and there are checkers even in the Redfish forum. If you contribute code there, it's got to pass the Pascal case checkers usually,
okay.
unless you have a strong reason to ask for an exception.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, this will probably have to make its way into Redfish, so we should probably stick with the Pascal case. I think you answered my question.
Yeah, I mean, you can even see it on here, mandated by DMTF, Redfish Standard for Consistency.
Yeah, and
Whereas the
this
bottom
is
one
more like,
says
yeah, it's more like,
JavaScript conventions.
Yeah, it's conventions, but there's no standards body behind
Yeah,
that. I don't think so.
DMTF is the standards body we
yeah.
care about. Okay, all right, question answered. So other than that, I mean, Jason, is there any point you wanted to make out of the lin check? I basically looked at it and I'm like, yep, I gotta fix these things, and it's on my to-do list. The the casing was the only thing that made that I felt was worth talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I would say is, maybe, as part of our development process, we should look at these tools as things to, check for, I mean, a lot of it. I actually removed some of the comments that the AI tool had,
Mhm.
because I went back and looked and I was like, that's not a problem. That the characters it was complaining about must have been, I don't know, it found them through something, but they weren't present in the JSON, they weren't present in the text. So anyway, there are some things I didn't include, but I think the main thing is, if this, this might be a good tool for us to use as we develop, documentation, to make our documentation a little bit better and more, I guess, cohesive, coherent.
Oh, absolutely right.
Yeah.
So did you use a specific tool here, or was it just
I use Notebook LM. I
okay,
think, yeah, I was using Notebook LM.
okay, yeah, yeah, for sure. Okay. Then Justin, you had like an outstanding AR to for the network part of the schema. Did you get any? Do you have any
No,
chance
I
to
haven't
do
had any
something?
cycles. I think I
Okay.
said before, probably it'll be mid to late January before I hit the cycles to look at that.
Okay, that's why I didn't even put it on the agenda. Okay. Okay. All right. Don, you took the AR of having like a proposal on the node enums. You
Yeah, and
want to take start presenting?
so unfortunately I don't have any slides. I started looking into it to see if there was already a standard out there, and I haven't been able to find one. I can kind of walk through because I think this is a larger group than we had last week.
Mhm.
One of the pieces that we were talking about in the schema was a node type that, and my comment was that we may want to create a recommended list. Otherwise, you're going to end up with every vendor deciding what their node type should be. And for things like GPUs, CPUs, RAM, that's probably pretty consistent. But when you get into stuff like one of the examples he had was I think it was like a service tray. Um, is that an LCD panel? Is that what does that mean? Or like one of our products is a management appliance, but it's also referred to as a top of rack appliance. So should I use management or top of rack? And when we start trying to build these interconnects of understanding the system, it just seemed to me that it would make a lot more sense of having some standardization. Unfortunately, it looks like I seem to be the only person in the world who thinks that this type of thing should be standardized. So I'm kind of working on trying to come up with something, and I'm hoping if I don't have it by next week, I should have it early January because I'm gonna be in between Christmas and New Year's, so I'll have some time to really sit down while everybody else is off and seriously look at it.
Okay, yeah. Actually, I would say you're not the only one because you're at least in my company.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the actually, why don't I see if I can do that? Without creating havoc here. Yeah, let me just, yeah, looks like I can. Let me just go to the schema itself. Yeah, one of the yeah, the yeah, one of the first fields was essentially describing the node.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, even my example here is like the AI server, right? Is kind of what makes an AI server different from another server. Um, yeah,
Yeah, and what makes a Ethernet-based backplane for communicate high-speed communication network different than an Ethernet switch that is being used for communicating out to an external network
yeah.
and things like that. And that's kind of what I was looking at here is when you're looking at troubleshooting, whether this is a interconnect between AI nodes or whether this is something trying to talk to an external network may matter. We don't know, but it may. And so actually having some little bit more filler around that was what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, have what my take was have an enumeration of the common things, right? And then every system should look at that enum first and say, yeah, this is pick the one that fits well, and then if something is really that different, then so be it. But um,
Yeah.
there's no reason why one supplier calls it CDU, the next one calls it a cooling distribution unit, and the third person calls it the liquid cooling
Right.
pump, right? So, and
Yeah.
then
And that's also my concern is, when you start talking about some of these nested things like a cooling system, it's like, okay, well, I'm calling it a CSU, but then I've got a CDU. Well, are you including the CSU information? Are you including the CDU information inside of the CSU? Because it's the entire system, or is that a higher level piece of information? And it's the particular section of Vertiv I work in is the data center infrastructure management section. So, we've dealt with this through service processors and pulling data in and having to figure out what type of service processor we're talking to. And that's kind of where this is coming from, is a little bit of previous experience of some of the challenges sometimes and knowing how to pull data based upon what you're talking to and how you figured that out.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it's absolutely valid.
So,
Yeah, so
thanks.
yeah, so if you could do me one favor, can you give some ping me ahead of time if you're ready next week or not?
Yeah, I will. I will. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah. I had a crisis at work, and that kind of threw me for a loop over the past 24 hours. So,
Uh, how do I always put that? I'm not sure that you're in good company, but you're in lots of company, and you're in my
I,
company.
I might not be in good company, but I'm in an experienced company.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm exactly. All right. Okay. Let's just go get that up. Okay, I'll bring the deck back up. If you went there. Actually, while I'm not in the deck, bring up the Um, what to look for? If I thought a minute ago. Well, so just since I'm here, I placed the documentation on our shared drive. There's basically next to the presentations and recordings and minutes, there's now a specification folder, and there's a section for code currency where you will be able to find everything. Excellent. Back to slideware. Right. All right. James, did you have any more material from your presentation last week?
Hi, everyone. Yes, Michael. Should I share my desktop?
Yeah, or whatever you want to share. Yes, please take the share.
Share. Someone else is sharing. So you need to let me share because.
Oh yeah, that's why. That's why this is.
Thank you.
This is. Sorry, I don't use Zoom that much.
Okay.
Perfect. I can see it.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I shared some use cases last week. So it's a continued discussion for last week. So Michael asked me what I expected if we want to debug the data center cases for I presented last week.
Mhm.
So I think about this last week. So I wrote this PPT, and let's talk about the current situation. And I use the Intel platform as an example. AMD platform should use a similar function, similar bus like I2C, but I use the Intel platform Paggy as one example. So the kind of situation for us to debug the data center, the Intel CPU will provide a bus called Paggy. So the Paggy will connect to the BMC like this. So the BMC will talk to the CPU from Paggy, and then will access all those PCIe configuration and the state registers. So the BMC can access all this PCIe devices. So we can get all those link status or whatever error message or error report registers. The problem is if the system is hung, so we cannot read it. When the system is working properly, we don't need it. But when the system is hung, we cannot get it. That's the problem. So what I expected from Intel or AMD or NVIDIA is like this. For the PCIe device in the side, we should support OOB interface like I2C. The current PCIe device, we cannot get all those configuration register or state registers. Because so you can only get all those PCIe configuration or state registers from the mainstream. It means you can get from the operating system, use LSPCI or whatever tools. You can get it from the CPU, the mainstream, not OOB. So what I expect in the future from Intel, AMD, or NVIDIA is like this. You have to, I use the BMC to access those PCIe devices and can access all those configurations and the state registers. So for all those link status, speed, or error count, you can directly access all those PCIe devices. I don't need to get from the CPU, because when the CPU is hung, I have to access all those device status. And so what I expected in the future for the future PCIe device is like this. The PCIe bus can access all those configuration registers, device status, and link status, or also one PCIe device connect a lot of device, right? I want to get those device status too. For example, the RAID controller will connect a lot of hard drives. So I want to get all those hard drive status from the PCIe device too. The most important things I should get from the I2C bus. When the system hung, I cannot access the PCIe bus. I want to get all those registers, configurations from the I2C bus. So my BMC can access all those information just for future PCIe device. If all those Intel or AMD or NVIDIA or other companies can support this idea, will be easy for us to debug all those issues in data center. It's much, much easier.
Mhm.
And this one thing. The second thing is, in the current configuration or state registers, a lot of informations are missing actually. So I want to separate all those links and the device status. Because in my situation, a lot of times I don't know if it's a cable issue or it's a device issue. I want to get all those informations from PCIe registers. I know exactly this is a cable issue or this is a device issue. This device is dead. I want to know all this. So two things. One is I want to get this information, the configuration status from I2C from the BMC. The second one is a lot of detailed information for the configuration status. I want to separate all those. I will define all those details for link status or so the exactly what I want to know is it's a cable issue or it's a device issue. I want to separate all this. I also want to know the device, connect a lot of device. I want to know the attached device status. Then it's much easier for me to debug all those issues. Sure, in the future, I will make these slides much better and maybe provide to Michael again. but this is my rough idea, and think about this to debug the data center issues. Thank you, Michael and everyone.
Yeah, so let me ask some questions, right? So, actually, thank you for putting this together, right? So so you want essentially these configurations from, I would assume you would want to get them from both the devices as well as the host, if it's assuming
Oh,
they're
sure.
from
Yeah,
basically from any
from
component, right? That could
right,
have it. Okay,
right.
and
From host and from the OOB, from
Mhm.
I2C both.
Mhm. And I2C is essentially I
Or
read that.
whatever bus is OOB. I
Yeah,
use I2C just as example.
yeah, that's a good example. So that could be like the in my head, I would translate that into the like whatever carries PLDM, for example, right? Um, but maybe that's the wrong answer. Just seems very logical for what else we're doing. I
So
see just
let
in a
me ask
minute.
a question here. James, are
Mhm.
you familiar with PCI EMI?
PCIe MI.
Yeah,
Can you talk about, I don't know, the
yeah,
PCI?
so it's a fairly new management protocol from PCI SIG. Runs over MCTP, so would go on an out
But
of
you
band
still
bus.
use the you still use the PCIe bus. For example, my problem is when your host is dead, the whatever, if you want to get all this information from PCIe bus, it's impossible.
But
That's why
it doesn't, PCI EMI does not have to run over the PCIe bus. It can run over I2C or I3C.
if you can from us with the bus, it would be nice. But the current PCI device I have, or normally is the network or is a GPU. So currently, we cannot access all those configuration registers or device state registers from the I2C. That's why I expect it.
Okay. We've had Austin Bolin in this meeting before. He's, I think, the author of that spec.
Yeah,
So
I can
it may
ping
be
him.
valuable to have him look at your set of requirements and say what he can and can't solve with PCI EMI. I'm going to drop in the chat a link to the presentation from the Global Summit that he
Oh,
did.
great. Okay.
So take a look at that. Austin's been in here before. Maybe we can get him back in again and see if he can, like I said, see if he can solve those problems. Because I think what you're describing is a set of problems that he's intending to solve with PCI EMI.
Well, what I want is when we debug the device, right? When the system is hung in the data center, I want to get all those informations of the device informations.
Yeah, and I think that's possible, but Austin's the deep expert, not me.
Okay.
So
Yeah, I'll reach out to him. If he's willing to come back. Probably has the same problem we all have with being really busy.
yeah.
So James, I got one question on this. And so there's basically two ways I can see this being solved, right? And um, so do you expect all this information, because you're calling them registers, right? Um,
Right.
do you expect them to be something that is, let's say, um, it's like, okay, um, that is like, oh my God, go with the, but that is like vendor proprietary. So you have access to a bunch of registers, but you need some recipe from, you know, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA, or Broadcom, whoever built the device to make sense of what you just read, or
Uh,
or is it something where you say, hey, this is a PCIe device? Everything you have listed here is something that, essentially applies probably to any PCIe um, connection and maybe deserves to be standardized.
It's like this. And like you said, if you use the private property like a JTAG or whatever, that's not that's a big problem. It's very difficult to read. Also, um it's hard to connect to the BMC.
Yeah.
We
Yeah, so
want we want
no.
access all those informations from BMC easy. If it's
Yeah, yeah,
from
yeah, no,
JTAG or serial
no,
port.
So I
no,
would say, from my viewpoint, and I think this may answer your question, Marco, is I would do it like the ODBC in your car, where we as an organization kind of has here's some base standards that we expect you to be able to pull. Now,
mhm.
now that you've got a channel, we will give you the ability to build a tool that can go deeper and get proprietary information that we as a standard doesn't necessarily give you, but we're going to give you a pipeline, and as part of that pipeline, we're going to say these are the pieces that we want you to present publicly. So you don't have
Okay,
to go
so
out to each vendor to get a
Right.
tool to debug, but the vendor then can
Exactly.
use it if they wish to do a deeper debug.
so let's say
Exactly.
so if uh, okay, pretend I'm jumping a little bit into solution space, but let's pretend this is all contained in a yeah, I'm pretending, right? So the
Yeah,
I2C bus is really MCTP PLDM. All of this is a PLDM type 7 file. Just gonna, again, this is all pretending, but I
right.
think I'm pretending something that's reasonably backed up by industry standards and trends, right? So let's say this is a type 7 file. So Donald, what you're saying is that type 7 file would sort of have let's say a public section where the things like PCIe configurations, big status, device status, um, all the things that are very common for a PCIe device um, would be encoded in the public section, and essentially the our specification provides the decoder ring on how to make sense out of that. Um, and then it has a vendor specific section where there is additional information that um, you know you that is the
Yeah,
decoder ring for that is not provided by us. Maybe there's
right, right.
some
Yeah,
maybe we
give them.
outline a little bit how the decoder ring is to function, but that's kind of something like that.
Right, exactly. Because the reality is, we can sit there and we'd say, hey, I don't care whether it's a NVIDIA GPU or an AMD Radeon GPU. As a GPU, I want this information. And the
Mm.
second there is the point to get GPU information, there's an I 100% expect NVIDIA and AMD to go, oh, hey, I've got, I've already got the hardware inserted to do this. Then there's nothing stopping me from creating an encrypted packet that nobody knows that I can send a special code that nobody knows about, and maybe do a private certificate to access this extra debug. Now I can use it for my development. Now I can use it when my technicians are there and give a value add for my technicians without hamstringing everybody else's technicians. And that's kind of what I'm picturing is I expect
Yeah,
that's going to happen one way or the other. So we might as well say, hey, this is what we expect for everybody. And we understand you may have other things go through this that are vendor proprietary.
yeah, and I mean I think there is also um like a state in between, right? Like
Yeah.
there's these are what James has here are the things that are you know, universally apply to any PCIe device ever, right?
Yeah.
Give or take, right? And then you are saying, hey, there's a set of information that is, let's say, Intel, NVIDIA, AMD you know, proprietary information, and we go ahead and encrypt it. And you know, without our help, you would never, you are not, we will disable you from making sense of it. Um, the thing that I see in the middle is the information that is, um, we are not highly secretive about, but at the same time, it is not universal, right? It's some that, you know, some configuration inside a given GPU that is, specific to the vendor, but otherwise really kind of public information. So we would probably expose that in not in a secured way, um, but you still need to have the Intel, AMD, NVIDIA decoder ring to make sense out of it. And that decoder ring, maybe is only available under NDA, or
Yeah.
maybe it's publicly available, but you have to, at least make it to our website.
Yeah. Okay. I kind of see what you're saying, where it's like, okay, hey, here's stuff that people are potentially going to need, but we also understand that you want you don't mind third parties having it as long as they've done appropriate due diligence, whether that's an NDA or some other kind of due diligence type of thing.
Yeah, like I'm not even worried about the diligence at this point, right? Like I say, like link status, right, is a thing that's universally exist for every PCIe device,
Right.
right? So it makes the
Yeah.
things that universally exist make sense for us to standardize, right? Um, then there's other parameters that, while not necessarily secret, they don't universally exist, right? They are, a publicly known quirk of a given GPU architecture, right? Um, so that, while that can be exposed in a, public way, we're not going to try to specify how to do that, right? It becomes then just a, a region of unprotected data, right? That you need the Intel decoder ring to.
Yeah. And that
Getting the Intel decoder ring may not be hard, but we are not in the standard trying to enforce in any shape or form, how that's organized
so,
or what's
so
in there.
so yeah, so what it sounds like is what you're picturing is we have kind of generic specifications. Okay, I don't care what GPU it is. One of the things that you have to tell me is what your current set resolution and refresh rate are. Period. It doesn't matter who you are. If you're a GPU, you have to present that through this bus. Now we will have a vendor, I'll call it vendor specific spot that we say, here's some publicly accessible where I could do a query and then you hand me a packet that is whatever data you think should be appropriate for that packet, but it's still publicly accessible. That's still part of the specification. And then if you want to have a separate thing that doesn't have anything to do with us along this channel, that's up to you. It sounds like that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But basically, I
Yeah,
see like three regions. The one that we would specify, like, if your PCIe device, give me your link
yeah,
status, and here's
right.
how it is to be encoded, and I can, if I pull the information from any device ever, I can always figure out the link status, right? No
Yeah,
matter who it is, right?
right.
Then there's the next section that's not overly protected, but it is perfectly vendor specific, right? But what's in there for an Intel device or an AMD device are completely different with completely different meanings, and you need
Yeah,
some decoding to make sense of it, right? And then there's a third section, which is you know, potentially, which is, let's say, fully end-to-end encrypted, and only the given device vendor can, decrypt it and make sense of it.
yeah, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and this would be like, would we classify this as a debug dump, or is that the uh,
I mean, the
it's
problem is when how do you define a debug dump?
mhm.
To me, this is a status dump. Now, you may be doing the status dump live while the system's working perfectly fine because you're doing some kind of maintenance mode or you're doing some kind of just monitoring for predictive debug. It may be that you're doing the status dump because the system's dead and you're doing active debug. But debug to me is more a use of the data versus a type of data. But then I'm probably the only person who thinks that. So I get weirdly pedantic in somehow I define words sometimes.
I like it.
Yeah.
There's some. Yeah. Enrico, others, any thoughts?
Takes forever to get off mute. No, I'm in agreement. Yeah, nothing to add.
All right. Yeah. So thanks, James, for presenting. I'll write
Yeah.
that down as well.
Yeah.
And thank you for your thoughts, for everybody's help.
Yeah.
So, and
Thank you
then
thank you very much, James. This is exactly the type of stuff I was asking about last week when we were going through those issues that you were presenting.
all
So,
right.
Margot, maybe I missed this. What's the next step on this then?
So I think that's well, good question. We haven't written that down, right? I think that's as we go back at our actually let me if I have this slide open. So if I do, could might as well share slides again. Okay, I should be able to see my screen again. So we had kind of a couple of weeks ago had kind of created the spec outline and the list of stacks, right? So probably under the bulk dumping, there is introducing this idea of a status dump. And yeah, gonna add to that.
Okay, so is that going to be another let another item under stacks, or is that just a sub of bulk?
It's probably a sub of bulk, I feel like.
Okay.
And yeah, I would look at it as a sub of subversion of bulk. And then maybe one of us can raise our hands to maybe write at least something up for like right now. I don't know. Donald, is something maybe you want to take a stab at, or not? I can do it. Just trying to share the joy here.
Yeah, I mean, my concern is I may be a little higher level just because I typically am used to dealing with that higher level than I am the nitty-gritty internal components the way you guys are.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, like to me, it's always both are equally important, right? Yeah. So okay, maybe I'll take I'll try to take a step at least just writing something down so we can. The way I look at it, Enrico, right now is we should write it down to flesh out later, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's probably that's kind of where my head's at, right? Because we'll have like we have all these stacks to worry about, right?
Yeah, it's just I mean we had this discussion. I just wanted to see what we were how we're gonna I don't want to say wrap it up, but how do we continue and move forward?
Yeah.
So, how do we make it longer term useful?
I was gonna say, so how about this, Marco? If you get a chance to write something down, write it down, send it to me, and I'll take a look at it and comment on it. And if I get a chance to write something down, I'll write it down, send it to you, and then you can comment on it. And that way we're not doubling the effort. And hopefully between one of the two of us, something happens.
Perfect. Let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, actually, I'm gonna let's do it slightly different. I'm gonna I will just open a Google Doc and start writing there, and you can go in there and just start typing as well, so we can literally do it in parallel.
Sounds perfect. Just share. If you don't have it, my email address is It is Donald that gave the revertive.com.
Yep,
So,
I'll send it to you. Yeah, I'll share the link with you one way or another.
sounds good.
All right. Cool. And then if we have something, I should talk about next week. Okay. So this hopefully next week. Jason, do you think you're gonna be ready with the security thing next week? Guess Jason stepped away from or talking on mute. Okay. I follow up with him offline. Other than that, we can stop a little bit early. Thanks. I think this was a good meeting.
All right.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks.
good rest
Thank
of
you.
your
Thanks,
day.
everybody.
Okay, bye.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.